Okay. Oh, bless you. All right, so let's talk about ceilings. Any questions about floors before we actually get going on that? No? Bless you. Uh-oh, you're getting sick. You're the culprit. Boo. we were talking about this earlier. Everybody's getting sick. Okay. Everyone is sick. Jameson's sick. He's gone. Yep. All right, so let's talk about ceilings, okay? One thing I want to remind you about in Revit is that, again, when we are creating our model, right, we have one central model that we generate all of our views of the model from, right? Floor plans, elevations, sections, any type of view that you use for construction drawings is generated from this model, right? So when I create a floor plan, the floor plan that we have over here, this main level floor plan, when I look at it, this is a view of our 3D model, right? It's a 2D view of our 3D model, okay? So I just want to remind you of that, number one. When we create floor plans like this, a floor plan is generated, and let me just pull up our view range here. A floor plan is generated based on a cut line, right? So essentially, if we were to look at this floor plan and look at its view range, this floor plan is shown at a cut plane of 3 feet looking down, right? So anything that I touch or cut at a 3-foot level horizontally on this floor plan and then look down is illustrated. So we see the pantry and the walls and the doors and all that good stuff. If I change this to something like, 6 inches, and I hit apply, hopefully something will happen, right? Oh, view range. Okay, so if I change it to 6 inches, we still see the door, we still see the walls, but those windows that were there are missing, right? And it's because we are cutting below them, so we don't see them, right? Makes sense to everybody. So if I wanted to change that, I go back to my view range, and I can change this to 3 feet. 3 to 4 feet is a pretty typical range for a cut plane, and I hit OK, and there are my windows. They're back, right? Okay. So when we look at a floor plan, we're cutting the floor plate, and we're looking down. When we create a reflected ceiling plan, we are essentially looking up at the cut plane instead of down, right? So this is the floor plan. And with every floor plan that is generated in Revit, you may notice, right, we have a little a category here called ceiling plans, okay? So for every floor plan that you create, a ceiling plan is generated with it, right? So you have dual floor plans created when you create a new level or floor plan, right? This floor plan, it's cutting and looking down, and this floor plan, it's cutting and looking up, right? So when I click on main level ceiling plan, click, right? When I look up, I see this stairway cut right here, right? I still do see these walls because they go all the way to the ceiling of the main level, but I see a couple of other things, right? And things look a little bit different. I see the upper level floor that is overhanging my exterior wall, right? I see the stair opening. I see these walls that go, all the way up from main level to upper level, and I see the shaft opening that we have. Okay, I'm going to WT, window tile, and we'll look at these, right? So this is my reflected ceiling plan, and this is my floor plan. Okay, reflected ceiling plan does have a view range associated with it. I'm going to hit edit. Now when I said, so a floor plan, you have a cut line and you look down, all right? And the cut is usually about 3 to 4 feet. With a reflected ceiling plan, you also have a cut plane, but instead of being at 3 to 4 feet, it's going to be 7'6", right? So that's kind of the generic cut plane for a roof or ceiling, sorry. And it's because you're looking up, right? You more likely want to see things at a higher level, right, above the floor, because you're looking up at the equipment on the ceiling rather than cutting and looking down. So the 3-foot level would show a lot of things like lower windows and maybe some equipment on the floor and different things like that, where a higher cut will show things that are more ceiling based. Okay, so that's what our cut line is going to look like right there. Okay, all right. So we have one thing, side note, it's really easy to get confused when you're working and accidentally go into like a ceiling plan instead of a floor plan, right? So just a note on workflow. When I work and I'm working on floor plans, I always close my ceiling plans. This is expanded, this is closed. I close my ceiling plan area so that I don't accidentally click on one of those plans to work, right? Just because they're easily confused, okay? And you would think, well, they look so different. How could you confuse them, right? But sometimes you just kind of, maybe you're annotating or keynoting, or, it's not something that you can get confused. And I see students do it all the time, right? And things aren't working, and you're like, I don't know why things aren't working, and it's because you're in the wrong plan, okay? So I will collapse that when I am working on a floor plan, okay? But let's talk about ceilings, okay? And with the discussion on ceilings, we kind of have to talk about floors at the same time, right? These are kind of decisions, workflow decisions that will be made in your office, but it's good to kind of talk about them and let you know kind of how things work, right? So when I look at my main level floor plan and I look at the floor, okay, and I'm going to actually go into a 3D view here, right? And I'm going to section box this, remember this? And I can grab the section box and drag this down and look at my main level. Here's my main level, all right? I've got a floor here, okay? This floor, the top of the floor is really kind of associated with the main level. Great, right? But when I look at the bottom of the floor, the bottom of this floor, if we have a basement below this, which we eventually will have, right, that could kind of, in my mind and probably your minds, be associated with the ceiling of the level below, right? So this is a floor, but it's kind of associated as being a floor from the main level, right? And then from the basement level, it's considered a ceiling, an RCP, right? So maybe your question is, well, I already have a floor in here and I already have a representation of maybe what my ceiling is going to look like. So do I need to add another ceiling in there, right? Or can I define my floor to have like gypsum board on the bottom side of it so that the ceiling looks like a ceiling from the other level, right? So I just wanted to say that, and let's kind of look at what that means, right? So this floor right here, if I hit edit type and I look at its structure, right? We have oak flooring on the top, we have plywood, we have this structure, and then if I wanted, right, I could hit insert, there we go, move this down, and I'll change this to a finish, and we will make this gypsum board, and we'll give it a surface pattern to look like gypsum board. Where's our gypsum? There we go. Okay, okay, and we'll make it 1/2 inch, okay, okay. And by doing that, I'm going to change to hidden line. You see that on the bottom of my floor, I've attached a gypsum board piece, and that's a ceiling, right? So here's one way that you can deal with a ceiling if it's very simple, okay? Okay, that makes sense. So I'm gonna leave that alone for a second, okay? And I'm gonna show you how we would actually create another ceiling and talk about the advantages of adding an actual ceiling into your Revit model as opposed to doing it this direction, which this is a pretty valid way of doing it for a simple ceiling, but there are advantages to using actual ceilings in your project, okay? All right, so if I go to I'm gonna close this out, this 3D view. I'm back here on the reflected ceiling plan of my main level, and you're thinking, hey, wait a minute, I only made gypsum board on the lower level, but because we use the same floor on this level as the upper level, when I made that change and added gypsum board, right, it added gypsum board to both of my kind of faux ceilings, right? So if I look here, I've got gypsum board and I've got gypsum board. Great, it's all patterned up nicely. Okay, so by doing that, there's my gypsum board. Great. But that is technically a floor. So let's talk about how we can add ceilings into our models, all right? If I come over here, I've got a basement level RCP, reflected ceiling plan, main level RCP. So the first thing I need to do is kind of make sure that I have the reflected ceiling plans that I need, okay? Under the architecture tab here, I have a ceiling tool, all right? I click on ceiling, okay? I've got the automatic ceiling, which means that if I hover in this space, it senses a boundary for my ceiling, and that will extend into the core of the wall, right? And I also have the sketch ceiling option. So if I click on that, I can use any of the other methods to draw a ceiling that I would to draw a floor, okay? In my experience, I have found that the auto ceiling seems nice, but it doesn't always kind of get the ceiling exactly where I want it. So I tend to end up having to draw my ceiling in any way, or align it in different places. So, you know, this is kind of nice, but usually I end up just drawing my ceiling in, okay? Let's make this pretty simple. Let's just, I'm gonna do 2 ceiling types, and one is appropriate for a house and one's probably not, right? But I wanna show you 2 ceiling types just for the sake of doing 2. One will do an acoustic ceiling tile, so you can see the pattern, right? And then the other one will be a gypsum board ceiling, okay? So I can come in here, you notice that when I click on the ceiling tool, I am popped into my sketch mode, right? Just like my floor. And so my task here is to draw the ceiling, all right? So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna use the inside edge of my ceiling. I'm gonna draw my ceiling just like I would my floor, right? But generally speaking, my drywall is not gonna go into my wall, right? It's not gonna extend into the core. So that's the reason why I end up drawing this, because, you know, Revit will sometimes sense weird boundaries for my drywall. Okay, we're just gonna make this go all the way around here. I can't quite remember. This is level 1 too. Let me just say, this is level 1. I can't quite remember how my stairs, this goes up, right? Well, so it would be open above, okay. So we have our level 1 RCP, okay, so we're gonna trace around the stair for now. And I'm gonna leave this little closet right here alone, and I'll show you why in a second. So I trace around the outer boundary of my interior walls here, okay. And this functions, I'm gonna TR trim, this functions just like a floor. So I have to have a closed boundary, okay. I also have to, once I'm done drawing my ceiling here, I have to associate a ceiling type with it, okay. And ceiling types are just like floor types, they're just like wall types, okay? So I come over here and I have a drop down and I can pick what kind of ceiling I want to use, or if I want to create a new ceiling type, I would redefine just like I would a wall or a floor, right? So I pick the type that I want and edit it just like a wall or a floor, which I'll do in a second.
So did you just put drywall on the bottom of the CGI?
Yeah, I did. But I'm gonna use 2, I just wanna show you 2 different types of, we're going to talk about that too. Yes. Okay, so there you go. Hey now. I don't want a ceiling. I just want the ceiling painted black more so, right? Okay, so we have our floor. We have our outline. What's that? Yeah, there you go, right? We'll just paint it red. We'll go, yeah. Okay, so we've got our ceiling and it's outlined, right? If I pick a ceiling type and I hit finish, just like I would a floor, then I get a ceiling. And it looks like that. And this is an acoustic tile ceiling, right? Which, you know, we're probably not going to use in a house like this, but just to show you, here it is, okay? Now I can pick the hatch lines on my ceiling, right? These are technically the ceiling T-grid, right? But they're, you know, kind of called hatch lines, right, in our world. And I can grab them and I can drag them, click, and you see my little cursor changes. I can drag them, and you see how my ceiling grid adjusts. Yeah, you can center it, yes. See, there's the magic of Revit, right? This is kind of the eternal AutoCAD problem, right? So you can hatch, but you can't always center it. You can, but when you move things, it doesn't recenter itself, right? Or if you do just plain lines, then you have to move them every time you change something. Anyway, you can move these lines, you can dimension to them, you can get them however you want them working. But my point, so with this, you can move the lines of the grid to make them how you want them, okay? If I come near the boundary, I select this, you know, just like I would a floor. And it is more easily selected when I approach an edge, right? So same thing with the floor. It was hard to kind of, without a pattern, pick the floor, right? But if I go near a boundary, I can tab, till I get my ceiling, and there it is. Okay. Now, one thing you're going to notice, this shaft opening that we have, here's, I guess, another perk of the shaft opening that I didn't talk about. So I create a ceiling, right? And I didn't create an opening in the ceiling, and the shaft, you know, it cuts a hole in there. It obscures the ceiling. So I guess there's another kind of perk of using a shaft enclosure, is that, you know, it doesn't just cut through floors, it cuts through the ceiling, right? So when you move things, it automatically adjusts. Great. But what if I want to cut a hole in my ceiling, right? Well, I can click on the ceiling, I can hit edit boundary, and I would create a hole just like I would, or an opening, right? Just like I would in a floor. I would use my drawing tools, and I would create another enclosed area within my first area, hit finish, right? And there's my opening. Now, this opening is showing the floor below it, right? So if I wanted the opening to actually be an opening, I'd have to make an opening in the floor, okay? Okay, so I can see my gypsum board that I put on the bottom of those joists. I can see this is an actual, you know, kind of defined ceiling within my Revit model, okay? Let's talk about the differences, and then I also want to talk about the height of this ceiling, all right? So the difference between just adding gypsum board to the bottom of your floor joists in your floor system and actually creating an actual ceiling in your project is the items that you host to them, right? So not all items will host to every object, right? Meaning if I want to add lights, okay, and I say this generically, or generally, I guess, generically, and there's always the rare case where somebody has been smart and said, hey, these objects can host to anything, right? But you will find a lot of families, a lot of components like lights and probably fire sprinklers, right? And projectors and equipment and different things that go on ceilings, they won't attach to a floor because they know that they're a ceiling hosted item, right? So if I come into my component, let's see what components I have, like a couch. Well, let me see if I can find something that won't host. It'll probably work. A desk on the ceiling. Let's see, it'll probably work. No, okay, never mind. When I don't want things to work, they always work, and you know, anyway. But there are items that will only host to certain things. Let me go find some lights. Insert, load family, and we'll go to electrical, architectural lights, electrical and power. I never know what's in here. Let's see. Were there? Ah, there we go. So they've taken them. Okay, they've changed this. Internal lights. Okay, so we'll choose maybe a recess light. We'll try that. Okay. They have so many families in here now. They didn't used to have all these. All right, so I have a light family, right? And I can hover over my ceiling and I can click, 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 and they're not visible. We'll talk about that. But if I hover over my floor family, do you see it says you cannot place that, right? So Revit with, you know, different items does recognize this is a ceiling, click, click, click. Even though they're not visible, which we'll talk about, it does recognize the difference between these two entities, okay? So that is the reason why you would choose to add another ceiling into your project as opposed to integrating gypsum board into a floor system, essentially, is for your lights, right? So let me go into a 3D view. I gotta figure out where those lights went. They're on my ceiling somewhere. Oh, wait a minute. What in the world? They're hanging out sideways. Okay, hold on. I didn't mean to do that. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Well, I'll show you what I did. I forgot to change the face. Lights go on walls, right? All right, so there are all my lights, okay? And they recognize that this is a ceiling and ceilings host lights, and they recognize the difference, you know, between a ceiling and a floor, which floors don't generally host lights, okay? So when I look at this kind of in a sectional view, so I come up here to my section. This is that quick section I showed you how to draw yesterday, or when did we have class? Monday. When I look at a quick section here, and I click and look here, right, I can see my lights hosted into my ceiling, and here is my floor above. All right, and they're all my horizontally faced lights that shouldn't be there, right? See, that's a problem when you're, you know, I laugh because when you're new at this, you start clicking around, like click, oh, the lights aren't going in. And then you don't think about like actually where did the lights go because I clicked, right? And then somebody comes back and says, did somebody add 400 lights just in the middle of the space? You know, you're like, yep, that was me, sorry. Okay, so here's our ceiling, and I'm looking at this in a sectional view, right? And if I click on my ceiling and I look over here at my properties, right? I see that the level that my ceiling is associated with is main level, all right? And I see that the height offset from the main level is 8 feet, okay? So essentially, what this ceiling has done is it has created itself associated with the main level, but offset 8 feet, right? So if you wanted to associate it with the bottom side of this floor system, you would essentially kind of have to know exactly how tall that floor system was and then how thick your assembly here was and offset it from that to get it right up against those joists, right? Which is math, and we don't want to do math. So instead, normally what I will do is I will place a ceiling and I will use align, AL, click, click, and I place my ceiling. Once I've done it one time, if I need to place another ceiling, I can click on it and look and see, oh, it's 8 foot 6 1/4 off of that level 1. Okay, I'm going to close out of this section. We're back here in our RCP, reflected ceiling plan. Let me change to 1/4 inch. There, that looks pretty good. Yep.
Do you have to leave room like in between the ceiling and the floor for like electrical stuff or anything else, or can you just throw it there?
It just depends on what kind of project you're working on. For residential, no, because it will fit up in the joist space, right? But for like,
Do 11 and 7, 8.
if we do, yes, that is a good point. Yes, but if it's something like this, then the ceiling will be dropped down below the deck up above, like 2 feet, 3 feet, sometimes 4 feet, to allow ductwork and sprinkling and lighting and all the equipment to go up above. So it just depends on the project. Yeah. All right, so I have my ceiling here, okay, and I've added my lights, right? So I just want to reiterate, if some of you caught maybe the reason why we added a ceiling, right, instead of just adding gypsum board to the bottom of the joist for the floor, but the reason is when you add gypsum board to the bottom of your floor system, it's not considered a ceiling, and objects that host to ceilings won't host to that. So you won't be able to add your lights into your reflected ceiling plan. So we have to add a ceiling in, okay? All right, let me just grab this ceiling and let's change the type. I'm gonna click here, okay, and I am going to use my drop down and change it to gypboard on metal stud. Okay, so I just changed it, there's gypsum board, right? If I wanna create a new type of ceiling, I can select the type of ceiling closest to whatever I wanna generate, right? Click on it, hit edit type, duplicate, and maybe we want this on wood stud. Maybe we want 2 layers of gypsum board. Okay, so I hit edit, and we'll do wood, soft wood, yep, there we go, okay, and that's gonna be, and then we'll do a layer of 2 layers, we'll do of 1/2 inch, and we'll add another layer. Right?
You just can't copy them?
No, you can't copy, you have to insert. I know, pain in the neck, huh?
You'll just click on 4, push Control C, and then Control V.
What?
Copy. Just copy it.
Within here?
Yeah.
Let's.
Alright, Control C.
It's not gonna work. Do you think I want to mess up all of this work I just did? No. I'm not going to risk it. Okay, so I added a wood stud. It's 3.5 inches, right? And then we have 2 layers of gypsum wallboard. I hit OK, OK, and that has changed, right? So if I look at this in section view, click, click, right? Let me drag that down just a little bit. I don't see the striations. I don't see the stud and the 2 layers of gypsum board because my detail level is coarse. So I'm going to change it to medium. And now I can kind of see we have those 2 layers of gypsum board. I've got my stud there. I have my little recessed can light. Okay. It is not snug right up to the joist, so I'm going to align it. AL. Click, click. There you go. Right? I can see my opening right there. What's that?
Can you just do gypsum board on the ceiling?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yep, exactly. Yep, so
So it would just line up straight out of the
Exactly.
So then you put your lights in and whatever else you need to.
Yep.
'Cause that's how they're gonna do it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so if if you're just doing a residence and they're just gonna, they're gonna put a drywall right on the bottom of the joist, right? Essentially, so I could hit edit type on my ceiling, duplicate, and we'll call this a gypsum board ceiling, edit. And instead of the core boundary, the structure being lumber, right, it'll be gypsum board. And you'll delete out those other 2 pieces. And so I'll click on that, delete, click on that, delete, hit OK, OK. There's just my gypsum board. AL, align, click, click. Don't forget that you added gypsum board to the floor system, right? So we're going to hit edit, edit, and we'll remove that gypsum board, right? Delete, OK, OK, and there's your ceiling. I kind of wish that we could add, and well, you can kind of combine these 2 things. It's not a great idea, but it would be nice if the floor system would allow you to recognize, the ceiling below. I think it makes sense, right? Just to build it all in one assembly. It's all one piece. If you move it, it's all one piece. But they haven't quite come that far. I could constrain this to be attached to the bottom of my floor joist, but sometimes it doesn't work very well. So I guess it kind of is what it is. It's like the floor finish, we kind of talked about that. Well, the floor finish doesn't go under the wall, right? This would be kind of the same topic. So instead of building your floor, like the wood finish onto your floor system, you would create a second floor that sits on top of it, right? That shows exactly where it goes. Hello.
Hey there, Shelly.
Hi.
Are there any open computers?
Yeah, if you want to sit at one of them, I can unlink you. You gonna be over here?
Yeah.
Okay, let me unlink you. Hopefully, is that it? Yeah? Okay. All right. All right. So we have our ceiling in here, all right? Pretty easy. Residential type construction is really pretty easy, right? It's generally going to be just a gypsum board ceiling. But essentially, if it were wood, all I would do is edit type. I would duplicate this, or duplicate it, give it a new name, and then the structure for like a wood ceiling would just be wood and whatever thickness it is, right? So Corey, in your case, when you're doing, you want to add ceilings, right? Because you want to add sprinklers, right? And so it's going to be whatever, whatever the structure of the ceiling is in there. And you can drop them down from the joists and have space in between there and work that way too. Okay, so we have this type of ceiling where it attaches right to the joist, but then we have other types of ceilings called soffits where you have a dropped area, right? So maybe in the middle of this room, we have a cloud. And a cloud is, just a dropped area of the same ceiling type, brought down. It can be open above or not, or whatever, whatever kind of design effect you're trying to achieve. But let's talk about how we can have, a soffitted area in a ceiling, okay? And a soffitted area is essentially you have to drop your framing down, so you have to have like a wood structure or a steel stud structure, to support a ceiling that pops down a certain distance from your, field ceiling, and then has lights or whatever in it, right? It could accommodate structure or ductwork, or maybe it's just aesthetic, acoustics, whatever, okay? All right, let me go back to my main level here. Let's say that we have, I'm gonna get rid of this opening right here. Edit boundary, delete, finish. Okay. We'll talk about lights or components, their families. We'll talk more about those probably next week. But they're, you know, you can insert them, you can grab them, delete them, move them, do whatever you want to do with them, right? Let's talk about dropping a soffit, all right? So let's say we want to, this is the kitchen, right, if I remember. Let's look at my view range and make sure. Do we have any window? I don't have any windows. We'll just drop some soffits there. Okay, so I'm going to drop a soffit, drop a portion of the ceiling right here down a foot, okay? And the way that we're going to do this is that essentially we have to draw a wall off of the ceiling, right? And then we have to create a ceiling below the level of the existing, like the existing level of the ceiling, okay? It's not super easy. There's not a soffit tool. It's not an easy process, and you have to switch from plan view, RCP view to a sectional view to make sure you get it right, okay? Before I do that, one quick note, I haven't done this little ceiling in this closet, which, you know, you normally would. I guess this is a little bit of a workflow question as well. Some places like to do the ceiling all as one piece, right? So you have a giant floor of a building and they like to do the ceiling all in one piece. I found that maybe a better way of doing your ceilings is in small chunks, so that if you have to change something or delete something or alter the level of some portion of the ceiling, then you can do that easily without deleting everything. And that doesn't sound like a big deal unless you've placed 4,000 lights in your building, and if you delete your ceiling, then you'll have to replace all of your lights, right? When you delete a ceiling, it deletes everything in that ceiling that's hosted to it, okay? So this little closet right here, if I were to add a ceiling, I would go to Architecture, make sure I'm in my RCP. I would go to Ceiling, where is it? Right there. And I'm partial to sketching. You could use auto ceiling if you want. But I just draw my little ceiling in there, and it's going to be gypsum board. We'll just do regular gypsum board and hit finish. And there's my little closet ceiling, right? So this little closet ceiling is separate from this big ceiling, right? So you can divide it up into areas. So this little bathroom ceiling would be separate, and this little closet ceiling would be separate, right? And then of course we would have to go to, for the upstairs, we would have to go to our upstairs view and add all of our ceilings in our upstairs view as well. All right, so let's talk about creating a soffit, all right? And there's two ways that you can go about generating a soffit. And the first way you can do it is from the floor plan, and then switch to the RCP to create your ceiling, okay? Or I can define the wall that I need to drop down for my ceiling on my reflected ceiling plan, and then look at it in sectional view and then add the ceiling, right? It's not hard, but a little complicated. Okay, so I'm going to drag my section down to here. I created this section again just very simply to view my model. It's not any part of my drawing right now. It's just purely to view my model. And I created that one more time. I'm going to delete this. I created it by coming up here to my quick access, clicking on section. Oops, and just click, and it drew my section, right? Section points that direction, it's looking that way. I click on the line and it shows me with that blue dash, right, to the extent of my drawing that I'm looking at. So click, there is my section, okay? So I'm going to, actually I'm just gonna tile these two, WT. All right, here's my sectional view. And here is my reflected ceiling plan. And essentially I want to draw a wall from here to here, which will be my soffit that drops down, okay, my ceiling level change. And I want it to start at, we have 9-foot ceilings, let's drop a soffit a foot down. So I want my ceiling, another little ceiling piece, to be a foot down right here. Okay, so the studs would attach to the walls back here, right? We'd have one coming down and going across, and there'd be framing all the way down to establish a soffit right here. Does everybody know what the term soffit means? Does that make sense to those of you that are just, no? Okay, you'll.
Like outdoor soffits, like are there soffits inside too, or just
Yeah, so a soffit, we don't have one in here, is maybe the, let's look out here. We have the ceiling dropped. It's basically just dropping the ceiling, right? So these are all pretty much at the same level. Well, hopefully it's evident here, but it's just essentially like if you go into a kitchen, right, and you have an 8-foot ceiling, and then there's the kitchen, and they drop the ceiling above the kitchen area to make the appliances, right?
Oh, okay.
That's a soffit.
Oh,
It drops down. Soffits are also on the outside of the underside of a roof, the overhang.
Yeah.
That's also called the soffit. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to create a wall here, and my wall, instead of being defined as, you know, starting on the main level and going to maybe the bottom of structure, it's going to be associated with the main level, but it's going to have a base offset. So my wall, this is the main level, and this is the ceiling. My soffit is going to look something like this, right? So this, the bottom is going to be, I'm going to have a base offset of 8 foot, and it's going to be the associated level is equal to level 1, and then the top constraint is going to be, I think we have it named like bottom of structure, something like that, bottom of structure. Right, and then then we'll have a ceiling right here that we'll put in, right, and you'll have some framing above that. But essentially, you know, then you'll have your kitchen down here, right, so maybe your kitchen cabinets come out like this, right, like something like that, and you have an upper cabinet right here, and then your ceiling is going to be above here, and your joists will come like that, right? Okay. All right, so I'm going to add one more view to this. So I'm going to have a section view open. I'm going to have a ceiling plan open, and I'm also going to open up my main floor plan and tile all of these. Okay. So in my main level floor plan, I'm going to click on the wall tool, and this is main level 1. This is reflected ceiling plan 1 section, and my basic wall. Let's choose. Oh, there's a soffit here, but okay. So my base constraint is going to be the main level, but I don't want the wall to start at the floor, right? I want it to be 8 feet above the floor. And the top constraint, I want it to go up to top of wall right here. So my base or my top constraint is going to be top of wall and no top offset. I'm going to come over here to my main level. And you see I'm kind of drawing invisibly, right? Click, click, and it says, hey, the things that you have drawn here you can't see in this view. So Revit is telling me if you draw a wall starting at 8 feet, that's above your cut line and you can't view it in this floor plan. But I know I'm trying to do that, so I'm okay with that. So I hit escape, and I look over here on my RCP and see that I did get a wall drawn. It's a little bit off where it needs to be because I had it, you know, wall center line. And I was kind of drawing blindly too, right? So there's my wall. I want to see the striation in it. And if I look over here in my sectional view, there it is, right? Oh, so that probably needs to, I need to AL align my level with there. There we go, that's better. See, my wall fixed itself when I did that. So I've got this little wall coming down here showing on my RCP but not on my floor plan, which is exactly how I want it. Okay, this little wall is in the wrong spot, so I'm going to AL align, click, click, and I aligned it where it needed to go. Okay, so there's my defining wall, the framing. We're not going to really show framing here necessarily, but what we are going to do is we are going to have a ceiling type that has a stud and gypsum board associated with it, right, because it's dropping down. So I'm going to, first of all, I already have some ceiling coming in here, which it's at the wrong level, right? The ceiling is up there. So I'm going to edit that ceiling. If I can tab, 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 there's my ceiling. Edit boundary, delete, AL, align, click, click and align. Ooh, it's not there, is it? AL, we'll just align it. Okay, hit finish. Okay, so I stop my ceiling there, and really the drywall would come down and wrap around and go over to here, right? So now I need to create a ceiling here for this little soffitted area that is dropped down. Okay, it's just a lower level ceiling. I'm gonna, still in my RCP here, I'm gonna choose the type of ceiling that I wanna create. Let's see, ceiling. This one, I'll choose gypsum board on wood stud, 2 layers. We can alter that if we need to. And sketch my ceiling. And I am gonna draw it from outside edge to here. Okay, so I draw my ceiling and I hit finish. And it actually kind of popped in the right spot, right? 8 feet. It doesn't always kind of go in the right spot. It could be at 7 feet, right? And you think, oh no, what's happening, right? You can move it up, you can move it down, you can align it, AL, click, click, right? And so there's my little soffitted area. Now, the intent with this is that, you know, that I want the pattern of my, do you see how the pattern of my ceiling is showing here? I want the pattern of my ceiling to show on my reflected ceiling plan. I don't really like this line of the, you know, of the framing above showing. You wouldn't see that on your ceiling. So I'm actually going to take my little wall and I'm going to drag it up a little bit, just like that, so that I see a nice line right there. Okay. So here's one level of ceiling, here's a second level of ceiling. You've got your framing coming down, right? And then your soffit framing. And that's what it looks like in section view, right? And then you could have cupboards go up to it or have lighting in it, right? I could still click, create similar. Ooh, couldn't find an appropriate host. 7'6", that's weird. See. There we go. Okay, so we've got our little lights and our soffit. Okay. Okay. So that's how you're going to generate your ceilings essentially, right? You're going to pick kind of where you want the outer boundary to be. You are going to use a combination of walls and ceilings to create soffits. We're not going to use floors to, you know, with gypsum board on the bottom side to create a soffit. One other thing I want to show you about ceilings before we kind of finish this topic is that within a ceiling plan, you can add data markers to your ceiling, right, which is pretty helpful. One of my favorite things about Revit, let me come over here to annotate, and I have a spot elevation marker right here, click, and if I hover over my ceiling, it tells me, click, 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 3 clicks, how tall off the floor that ceiling is, right? So if I need to adjust it, then I can. And you can place these on a lot of different things, but you know, you use them on ceilings. But you know, it's 8 foot, 8.5. Is that what I want it? Do I want it 9 feet, right? So this will kind of allow you to keep track of where your ceilings are at. You know, ceiling is the high ceiling. I'm gonna go back to spot elevation. Here's the low ceiling, right? There's another one, right? And then here we don't have a ceiling, so annotate spot elevation, 3 clicks, click, 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 and you can get a spot elevation on your ceiling. Okay. Reflected ceiling plans are no different than a floor plan in any of their graphics. So I still, even though we haven't really talked about it yet, I still have a crop region that I have to worry about, right? So I still have a crop region that I can, you know, kind of drag in. It is still a view of the model, so I have my 3D model, and this is a ceiling view of that 3D model. I'm going to turn my crop region off. I can turn things on and off. I can click on this little light bulb and find things that are hidden if there are any, right? I can rename it if I'd like. If I want to put it on a sheet, click on Sheets, right click, New Sheet. I pick my title block, okay. right? Here's my sheet, and I can drag that view over onto my sheet, right? And there it is, okay? Ceilings are no different in any other element as far as phasing. So if you want them to be existing, you'd put them on the existing phase, right? Let's see. Hold on, let me make sure I didn't forget anything here. We talked about the openings, soffits. Okay. All right, any questions so far? Yep.
Can you show us how to put the soffit wall in again?
Yeah. Yep, let's do another soffit wall. And on that same topic, another reason that I like to separate out my ceilings is because some, like maybe you want the ceiling in the closet to be lower for whatever reason, right? You don't want it at 8 feet, you want it at 7'6", right? Oh. So I could come over here, the height from the level is 7'6", enter, right? So if these are all separate, then you can manipulate the height of them separately, which is kind of nice. Let's talk about adding another soffit wall, right? Let's create a soffit, we'll just do one over here in the corner, okay? I'm gonna create another section so we can look at our corner here. There we go, section. I like to be able to, whoops, let's do it this way, that way. Click, click. There's a sectional view of where I want to draw my soffit, right? And I feel like it's pretty helpful to have this view open while you're working. I'm going to go into my main level. Click, click. Okay, there's my main level. I have my main level open. Oh, there's another one of those lights. An errant light. To check the views I have open, there's my main level, section, and my RCP. So WT, and we are back, in a view that will allow us to see what's going on. So I'll just draw a soffit right in this area, okay? The first thing I want to do is I'm going to draw my soffit wall. And so while I'm in my floor plan here, I go to the wall command. Now, really the key in creating a soffit wall is just giving the wall a base offset, essentially, right? So if this soffit is going to start at 7 foot, the base offset will be 7 feet for this wall. The main level will be its base constraint, or its the wall or the level that it's associated with, and then it will go up to the same top constraint that any of the other walls go to. So up to the top of wall level. Okay, so the key here is draw it in your floor plan, give it a good base offset. And again, I say this a lot, and I say it because I think AutoCAD is different. When you're working in AutoCAD, you try and get things the correct everything the first time you do it, right? So you want the walls the right dimensions, you want them in the right place, and it's really easy to do that. In Revit, I generally will work and get things in the right general spot and then move it into the right place, and it just kind of works out that way. So click, click, and I just placed my wall. If I click on the wall, whoops, it shows me that it's associated with main level. It has a 7 foot base offset, right? And it goes up to top of wall. I can look at it in section. Top of wall, looks pretty good. Okay. I need to also probably do another little area right here, another soffitted, another wall here to finish that off. So instead of going to wall again and creating all those same restrictions, right, definitions, I guess, I'm going to click on this wall. I'm going to hit create similar. And I'm going to, oops, and I went a little too far right. TR, trim, click, click. Oops, the drywall's on the wrong side. Click, change it. You notice there's only drywall on one side, right, for this wall type. AL, align, click, click. Okay. We've got a little errant light. We'll move that out of the way. So I've got my soffit generated here. And in fact, let's flip our section so that we can see what's happening this way. Okay. So I can see this wall behind, right? And here is the actual soffit wall. Okay. Now I just need to add my little ceiling piece here. So I'm in my reflected ceiling plan. And, oh, first I need to take that ceiling piece out of there. Edit boundary. I'm just going to redraw, right? Trim, TR, click, 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 click. I'm going to get rid of that piece. Hit finish. Okay, so I've taken the regular field ceiling out of there, and I'm going to add one more. One more piece of ceiling that, I forgot how far down that, 7 feet? 7 feet. Okay, so I go to ceiling, I go to sketch, here it is. The ceiling is going to be, we'll just leave it there and we'll alter it after the fact, right? You forget, oh, it's not 8 feet, it's 7 feet, but we'll alter that. I hit finish. You think, oh, that's not right, right? I can grab it, I can MV move it down, I can AL align it, AL, click, click, which is probably more what you want to see or use, the tool you want to get used to using. I don't see the striations in my wall assembly because this is on a coarse detail level, so I'm going to change it to fine, right? Drag that up. What kind of ceiling type did I choose? Why is not my pattern not showing? Oh, I know why. Can anybody think of why my ceiling is not showing up there? This ceiling is at 7 feet tall. My cut line. My cut line's at 7'6". Yep, so in order for me to see that soffit, I've got to move my view range from 7'6" to, you know, 6'8". There we go. Oh, and I forgot to move that little guy up back there, but you guys get the idea. Now another thing that you will, does that make sense, Anna? Yeah? Okay. So another thing, you know, reflected ceiling plans show certain things on them, right? We're getting a little bit more into how your drawing should look, but we don't want to see doors on them, right? We don't want to see windows. We just want to see what would be indicated as the header above those. So the structure that is holding up the opening for the door, right? So, you know, you're going to have lights, you're going to have annotation that describes construction items, you're going to have soffit showing, you're going to have ceiling showing, right? But we're going to turn our doors off. So VG, Visual Graphics, or VV, I'm going to go to doors, uncheck, okay. Right, so I still see that where the opening is, which is what I want to see, but I want my doors turned off. And VG, Visual Graphics, and I'm going to go down and turn my windows off. Some people like to show windows on their RCP, some don't. I tend to turn them off. That turned off my opening too.
But those will be off just in the ceiling plans then.
Right, yep, yep. And I think, yeah, anyway. Hold on, let me undo that. I wonder if my head is below that still. Anyway. But, you know, you'll visually want to turn things on and off and make it look like how you want it to look, right? This is not quite right there. We'd have to move that up a tiny bit. But then, you know, and we'll talk about components in a couple of classes. Once you have all of these kind of base architecture items established, then you'll start adding components. So you'll start adding lighting and switches and outlets and furniture and plumbing fixtures and millwork and, you know, all of those other things that go into a project, okay? All right, let me go into 3D here. Let's just take a look at our little space, right? Let's look at our soffits. Where are they? Turn my section box off here. Oop, uh-oh. See how easy it is to mess things up, right? Where's my front door? There it is. Okay. right? So there's my little soffit. You see that, how it's just a dropped ceiling there. Here's another one of my little soffits right there in the kitchen that is cut. I've kind of cut it, but it's essentially just, I didn't clean this up very well, did I? It's killing me. There we go. Anyway, but you guys get the idea, right? But you can generally see how it works. And again, you know, I think Revit is such a useful tool for beginning designers because you can go in here and you can look at this, you know, and I can shade the view. It's all gray right now, but I can shade it and look at it and say, oh yeah, that's where that soffit happens and that's what it looks like. And oh, maybe it needs to be shorter. Maybe it needs to meet the top of the millwork, or maybe it needs to be taller, or maybe it needs to wrap around the corner to work, or, you know, or maybe there's a weird condition, you know, how does the drywall work right there? So this will illustrate a lot of issues, right, in your construction drawings. All right. Any questions so far? Ceilings? Okay. Let me just make sure I haven't missed anything here. Nope. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so that's ceilings. That's all I sort of had planned for today. I haven't posted an assignment yet for ceilings or floors, but I will do that today. So I'll write it here while we're in class and define it. But essentially what you'll be doing is you'll be, you know, we want a lower level floor, an upper level floor, and then we'll want a ceiling in, you know, the basement right here, and then a ceiling on the upper level, or sorry, the main level, and one on the upper level, right? Even though you don't have a roof structure yet or anything, you can still put a ceiling in your upper level, right?
You all want this on existing, right?
On existing, yeah, let's do existing. Okay. There we go. Revit has so many settings, and the hardest part about it is a lot of them don't show up unless you've selected something or you're in correct view, or, you know, things kind of.
One quick question, if you're gonna do a drop ceiling in a closet,
Uh-huh.
you don't really need all the walls around the closet, you just need a 2x4 to hold the ceiling. If you still have to draw walls for the soffit wall coming down.
No,
you just
that's
put it,
right. No, you don't.
Okay.
No.
how do you show the wood around to support it?
Well, that you're not gonna worry about that. So the walls themselves would just support the structure for the drop ceiling, right?
Okay,
And then you'd show the ceiling with gypsum board and a stud.
okay, so you would put the, okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Sorry, I missed my homework.
That's okay.
So I still can do it, or got the point, or just.
Yeah, you can still do the homework.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I just missed one. I just.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
okay.
missed one. Well, and there's a lecture online of the one of the class that
Yeah,
you missed.
actually, I'm feeling like the video online is better because I can
Good.
push some English.
Oh,
I
yeah,
can
yeah,
stop.
yeah.
I can write down and stop. So I really like the video.
Good.
YouTube, really nice.
Good.
And then another question is last week the club I
Uh-huh.
didn't show. I didn't find the location, but
Oh.
yesterday I found that this canvas have another. Is I just try find the U class the
Uh-huh.
235 the
2350.
Yeah, I tried in there find
Right.
some location, but I saw another like architecture club.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't pay the $10.
Okay.
And can I give you? Or
Yeah.
next time I will be show and check there the location on time.
Yes, and I will add you to that too. It'll send you. Did you get an email with a link to it?
I already.
You did. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You're good then. Yeah. If you want to bring dues next time, that's fine.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I can pay the $10 today.
Okay. Let me go
Yeah.
get. I'll get you a receipt. Hold on. I will add you. Oh, and leave this guy here. Hold on. Let me get some change.
Okay.
I'm gonna make you my Okay. In fact, you guys just want to come down to my office with me. If anybody wants to pay dues for the architecture club, just come down to my office and I'll get your receipt. Oh, it's my first. I'm so excited. Okay, come on. Look at my 2510, very diligently working along on your houses.
The way I had it, I was like, yeah, it's a long hallway just to get into the bedroom.
Yeah, it is.
And I was just like, I've gotta figure out how to tweak it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, maybe.
You could put the tub back here. I know it's a plumbing wall, I get that, but you could
Yeah.
put the tub.
Demo or on the outside.
Yeah, just we'll have to have a little extra framing, but it's not a big deal, right? Put a shower, like rotate the tub around, do a shower next to it.
Yeah, that's
a combo.
This is the shower right here.
Okay. Like if you did like just a glass enclosure, they can bring it right down on the tub, and then you could have that be the shower, and it would kind of fit very nicely right there. And then you could do like your closet, like do the toilet right here, you know, and then do your closet on that side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like,
If you want.
no, I'm just trying to figure this out.
Oh, let me start.